Power and torque is something I often see a lot of misconceptions about. For example, cars with a lot of torque have good acceleration, cars with a lot of power don't have good acceleration but have better top end, and it's all a bunch of misconceptions. So first of all, what exactly is power and torque? Torque is the force that's put on a piston when the fuel combusts and it pushes down. It's just the force going through the engine. You then have RPM, which is how quickly the engine is spinning, and when you put those together, as you can see in this equation down here, you get power. In this case, actually, this should be horsepower in the equation I've got. So power is torque multiplied by RPM, and in the case of having pounds-feet and horsepower, you divide it by 5252. Dividing by 5252 means that anytime you're above 5,252 RPM, you have more power than torque. Anytime you're below that number, you have more torque than power. This will always be the case. And I think it's because of this that the misconception of having a lot of torque means good acceleration, or having a lot of power and less torque means good top end, sort of is created. Because, well, if you have a lot of low end torque, you have a lot of low end power. When you get to higher RPMs, you don't need a lot of torque to have that sort of power. Power is the work done, so the more power you have, the faster you're going. Torque is irrelevant. To give an example, I've tried to emulate the torque curve of a low power, sort of high torque at low RPM engine. So you can see here that this car makes about almost 300 horsepower at 4,000 RPM. All of this power comes in quite early. It would feel like it's got quick acceleration because it would all pull at a fairly low RPM, and you can see then power sort of starts to trail off a bit. I haven't done it too dramatically, but you can see that the fact that there's a lot of low down torque means there's a lot of low end power, and that could be sort of where the misconception that more torque means better acceleration. That isn't true, as I hopefully will show later, that the amount of torque doesn't actually matter about acceleration, because it's how you use it with gearing and stuff. That's sort of a general effect. Then if we have something maybe more closely emulating a bike engine, you can see even at peak it's only making 230 pounds-feet, 220, and it's making a sort of similar amount of power here, a little less, 10 horsepower less roughly. But the fact is that despite having a lot less torque, thanks to having a higher RPM, or making that torque at a higher RPM, it's still making a sort of similar amount of power. So those are sort of the two ways of making power, really. You either have lots of torque or you have lots of RPM. And obviously, if you were to keep on going with sort of similar torque levels, you could probably, get crazy amounts of power. If you look at Formula 1 engines, for example, back in the sort of unlimited RPM V10 days, where they were revving up to like 20,000, the torque at that top end, probably maybe 200, 300 pounds-feet, and they're making 900 horsepower. I haven't done the actual maths, but you'd see some weirdly low torque figures and see still quite a lot of power. To help illustrate my points a bit, we're going to be using automation. I've built some engines as examples. They are quite dodgy engines that I've sort of exaggerated stats on. For the most part, just ignore all these stats. It's literally just the dyno graph you want to be looking at here, and I've tried to balance these engines in terms of weight, things like that, and obviously they don't make the most sense. They're going to be quite bad engines, but I want you to sort of ignore all that and just focus on the effect they have and the differences between them. So using the theory that more torque means a faster car, you'd look at this on maybe a spec sheet or something, and you'd see 342 pounds-feet of torque that in theory should be good acceleration, Well, the issue is that all that torque comes in at 5,000 RPM, which means that up until then, well, you've got, say, 200 pounds-feet, and then it finally kicks in at, well, like 4,000 RPM, 3.5 maybe, and it sort of starts to spike up. So if we go to the chassis here, you can see it does 0 to 60 in 6.2 seconds. Now, again, I have exaggerated this car a bit. It does only have a 5-speed, and again, if you do enough with the gearing, which I'll show later, you can work around having weird torque curves like that. But if we switch to the low torque engine I have, which is about 50 pounds-feet less, and you know, it sort of it does build up in torque a bit quicker, I suppose. So despite having less torque, it ends up building up power a lot quicker, just because it builds it up quicker, just because the turbo spools up quicker even, and yeah, you can see it's a full second quicker to 0 to 60 almost. And another side effect, fuel economy, it's about 4 mpg better, just because you can get moving a bit quicker. You're not wasting time just putting your foot down, waiting for the turbos to spool up, things like that. So yeah, that's sort of the point of having a good torque figure means nothing if you don't know where it is in the power band. Just seeing a torque number on a spec sheet means absolutely nothing. It's the same for power, I suppose, but I'd say to a lesser degree. You can have a power figure, not know what RPM it gets at, but it's a better idea of car performance. Nobody's going to go and sell a car with like really peaky RPM, or a power point, or where peak power is even. Whereas, say, you might get, for example, cars with big turbos might have a lot of turbo lag, which means they look like they have high peak torque figures, but you can't really ever use it. So, yeah, that can be a problem. Here I've gone inline 4, weighs 104 kilograms, and as you can see here, it makes 187 horsepower and 117 pounds-feet of torque. You can see here it's kind of a peaky engine. It does have a decently wide power band up top, but I've sort of built it to have as low torque as possible and high power as I can, while weighing similar to the other example engine I have. A bit of a bigger push rod inline 4, basically one that makes loads of low end torque, as you can see here, almost 200 pounds-feet and 100 horsepower. Exactly. Does weigh a bit less, but it's close enough to show off what I'm trying to say here. I've adjusted the gearing slightly just because both these engines are sort of kind of broken in the way that I've built them. The fact is, this engine's got no power, the other one sort of is too peaky to really move and sort of has the same effect as a real laggy turbo. But yeah, you can see here 11.6 seconds despite it having loads of torque, and if we switch over to the high power engine, you can see here it's down to 8.6 just from having a lot more power. Mind you, I say I had overgeared them a bit. It's still doing 134 miles per hour, so it's not like it's too short geared or anything. Yeah, so as you can see here, having a lot more power does improve acceleration, and having more torque doesn't really make a difference. In fact, if you look at this gearing graph here, you can see power is the only thing shown, because it's really the only thing that matters. It's also why you only ever hear people talking about power to the wheels and not torque to the wheels, mostly because torque to the wheels is just power. You can't actually measure that. Well, you might be able to, but the fact is that torque has no relevance on car performance directly, and so power is the one you need to be looking at. Obviously, if you adjust gearing enough, if we go back to that original high torque laggy engine, it was, yeah, about a full second slower. Well, it was, and then we adjusted the gearing. If I bring it back, oh yeah, it has a stupidly low red line, doesn't it? Yeah, I fixed the gearing a bit. So what was it? It was about, what was it, 6.2? About that? I don't know. Either way, if I put on another gear, it goes down a full second. And, well, yeah, it isn't quite as fuel efficient. And it is still a handful to drive just because it takes forever to spool up. Performance-wise, at least, you can work around that lack of low-end power. It's actually a big thing. Torque curves, power curves, and gearing go hand in hand. And I think I might do a video on that at some point. Anyway, hopefully this has been useful. I'm sorry if I've sort of explained some things poorly. I'll happily try and explain anything in the comments. So feel free to ask questions there. But yeah, thank you for watching. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Remember to subscribe to Boost Netherlands for more. And until next video, goodbye.